Hey, my name is Rhett Perriman, and today I will be discussing meat. Just kind of a general category, meat products. There are a lot of different types of meat products. There are red meat, pork, poultry, fish, whether you're talking about squirrel or alligator or deer, something like that. We consume meat every day, and it's a part of our lives, and it gives us that protein that we need. I want to start by talking about the structure of meat. Meat, when you think about red meat, is made of skeletal muscle of the animal. And within that breaking down that skeletal muscle, you have myofibrillar proteins, which make up about 50 to 60% of that skeletal muscle. And within that category, you have the most abundant protein, myosin, working alongside actin in the role of muscle contraction. Myosin is a thick filament that binds ATP and splits it into ADP, which produces energy and creates that muscle contraction. Then it will bind another ATP molecule and it releases the muscle, and then goes through that same process again of splitting ATP, binding ATP again, etc. The actin has two forms, G and F, and it is a thin filament that when you have 6 of those, they wrap around the thick filament of myosin and work together to make that muscle contraction happen. Now this is important in rigor mortis, but before we get to rigor mortis, I want to talk about the slaughter process as a whole and start with pre-slaughter and the animal itself. Now, the animal is in homeostasis, and homeostasis is where it is in an internal balance. It is everything in its body is functioning properly. There's no stress. Everything is going well for the animal. And really, any abuse or any stress to the animal before slaughter is really going to affect the meat and that pH decline during rigor mortis, and it's really going to affect the end part of the meat, the end quality of the meat, in a negative way. So you want the animal to be in homeostasis. You want the animal feeling good right before slaughter. We get to slaughter, and we start with a process called exsanguination, which gets the blood out of the animal so that we're not having to deal with that. Then we go into a pre-rigor phase, and in that pre-rigor the muscle is still soft, and with the muscle the ATP is starting to decline. The cells transition from aerobic respiration to glycolysis, and glycolysis is a process that creates 2 ATP molecules, and as a byproduct creates lactic acid, which is going to drop the pH of the meat from its pH of about neutral 6.7 to 7.2 physiological pH. We want it down to about 5.2 to 5.5. An example of how a pH drop is so important to the meat, an example of how pH drop can go wrong. I remember in Dr. Loveday's class when we had processed meats, we were making a summer sausage with acidulants, and we had let the pH drop to almost 4. And when it got that low, the water holding capacity of the meat was completely gone. And so when we tried to stuff the sausage, water was leaking everywhere. And so it just shows how important that pH drop is to the water holding capacity of the meat, to protein solubility, and to the color of the meat. Because if the pH drops too low or stays too high, you're going to have an off-color meat that's undesirable for consumers. So we go from that pre-rigor phase to rigor mortis. And in rigor mortis, we have the actin and the myosin. Usually when they bind to ATP, they let go of ATP, they let the muscle go. But without that ATP, they can't bind it, and so they stay in a contracted state, and that's why during rigor mortis, the animal gets very stiff, the muscles get very stiff, etc. The pH continues to drop during that phase to that point, 5.2 to 5.5, where we want it, where it's desirable, and then moves on to processing. Lastly, I want to discuss really quickly cooking meat. And meat is composed of collagen, of about 10% collagen. Collagen has a unique property of gelling. And so when we initially cook meat, the collagen will shrink and cause toughness in the meat. And then through extensive heating, extensive cooking, the collagen will start to gel, which will tenderize the meat and make it to where it's desirable for us to eat. So that's just a few things about meat. There's so much more to talk about. So please, about processing, about different things like that. So just about color and things like that. So if you want to know more, please check out these references right here. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.